So you're right about it should be allies swelling up with you. And I think it was.
Sorry, and I was going to say at the same time, there is a way of being a good ally and a bad ally in a sense as well. In that when you're a good ally, you let the person from the underrepresented group speak of their experiences rather than speaking for them. I think that's a really key point to remember. And also, I think just supporting and I think a phrase that came up a lot while I was doing a lot of reading into the Black Lives Matter movement, and in fact, Black people with disabilities as well, was that they were saying that you should push to amplify Black disabled voices, because there is a sort of hierarchy even within different groups of various different people. And if you amplify those at the lowest stage of that hierarchy, it's actually better for everybody, which was a really, really interesting thing to listen to and hear about. I think that was in the summer this year. I was doing a lot of webinars and that sort of thing.
So Hannah, go ahead.
Just was going to say, and that that's the absolute core of intersectional feminism, and that's what we is getting those voices of the people who are the most marginalised. It also annoys me is that, and I'm reluctant to say this on our podcast, but I'm going to kind of hope that it's not too bad because it's not the live one. As most people know that I used to be an evil Tory a long time ago in my dark past. Matt didn't know. You can tell.
I didn't know that.
Tell when people didn't know.
I didn't know, but I did it well.
I won't tell you about my dark past.
Shut this off now.
But no, I mean, I was as somebody who was quite politically interested and quite liberal, I got recruited by the whole everyone should just be allowed to do what they want to do. I'm not going to do the whole spiel I always do, but just trust me, I used to be a Tory, I'm not anymore, and there's good reasons for it. But what annoys me is the mockery that people within the right wing make. They will always say, all these bloody socialists, all they want is a black disabled lesbian. And for them, it's the sort of mockery of it. And what they aren't understanding is that the reason that we talk about these intersections is because if you are black playing a computer game, life is a bit shit. What you see in the chat is pretty depressing. If you are a woman, it's worse, compounded with your watching misogyny and racism at play. You then add in your disability and it's even worse. You add in the homophobia, and it's that intersections are so important. And as you say, Alex, it's the raising up of people who are experiencing all of these areas, not playing top trumps with which ism is causing more problems, but understanding that there are intersections where these things come together.
Definitely, yeah, I would agree there. But again, how to get that message into gaming is a problem I don't know how to solve. But I'm sure there's a way around it, and I think something like this is a good way to start because we're just talking about it.
Absolutely.
And hope will make people more aware and want to have these kinds of conversations.
I
was thinking about.
Yes, Matt.
I was thinking about I think Jem, it was you who was talking about the culture of like online servers and chats and all these places, and thinking about how the men who are in their 30s and 40s now are the ones who were in their teens and early 20s when like the first big multiplayer games were coming up. So the communities there are now the older parts of the communities, and the people at the young. So you say, you're playing now. When you play now, it's still bad, and so that means the young boys in that community are being taught by the men who started this toxic community, which is sort of like a microcosm for the whole of life and patriarchy. It's been bad men making a bad thing and then teaching the bad thing to the young men, and on and on and on it goes.
It's like when we were talking about how we all got into gaming and who introduced us to gaming. It's mostly men, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I'm just thinking about that. Yeah, it is. It's like boyfriends, and I have 4 older brothers as well. And so, it's very much been male influence on it. But I got into feminism a lot later than some people, so in my life. Although, musing. Jem, Did you look like you wanted to say something, and I just couldn't think of a good segue to bring you in.
No, I'm really fascinated actually by this. I think it just goes to show, doesn't it, that it doesn't matter what segment of society you go into, the general ills of society and the general things that affect society impact there. So gaming isn't some special little bubble where these things don't affect, or they affect worse, or anything really like that. I think it's just the same stuff is trickling through, and I think there is a issue around sharing. Actually, I think it comes down to this sort of zero-sum game. Like, if I let them have more equality, then I'll have less equality, which obviously isn't what the word means, and is an eternal frustration for me. And I think that the problem really gets bad once you get into groups that feel marginalized in any way, because they feel like they fought so hard to get what they've got. They don't want to share it with anyone else. They don't want to lift people up. And I absolutely agree with Alex, that we need to be lifting everyone up, and that by lifting everyone up, we lift everyone up. And I think that's something we're struggling with globally, actually, at the moment. I think we're struggling with it across the board. And I think it's, as you were saying about the similarities between the Rust community and what was happening in the US, what is happening in the US, there is this feeling, this that if we let them have more, we will have less. And I think actually that doesn't have to be the case, but I think it is. And I think the gaming world, certainly traditionally, I think this is changing. It's becoming more mainstream and it is becoming more common. But back when I started gaming, most of the people that you would find in an online environment, social gaming, were people who had various issues and reasons that drove them online. They didn't feel comfortable in society because maybe they were different, or they were shy, or they were bullied, or they were, there was all sorts of reasons. And so those people there that are now, as you say, teaching the new generation to be bad, gamers, I think that that was their space. They were already ostracized in society, so they were struggling in their own ways. And I think so I think that's my compassionate way to look at this situation.
I think you do raise an interesting point, because you say it's not a thing, but there is. If we do a quick potted history of gaming, and Matt and Alex, I'm going to be horribly patronising and assume you don't know your history, but you probably do. But the original, when we're talking about these ZX Spectrums and the Amstrad CPCs, they were not advertised to boys. They were advertised to children. They were advertised as family games. There was very much, gaming was not the exclusive zone of young teenage boys when games first launched. That was a thing that came later. There was a TV series, which I'm hoping Jem remembers, because otherwise I'm just going to look crazy, which is Games Master, where Patrick Moore of the Sky at Night was a giant computerized head who would give advice to small children about how to get past a level on a game, because you couldn't look it up on the internet then. So you had to write into Channel 4, go on TV and talk to the computerized head of Patrick Moore to find out how to get past a level on Sonic. But I was thinking back to this the other night. Those kids who were talking to Patrick Moore's head, they were white, they were black, they were Asian, they were female, they were male, they were, there was not one particular type. And particularly in the early series of Games Master, there was not this sort of blokey stuff thing. Later series of Games Master, where idiot who went out, it's a long story, but he said he was going to crucify himself and then wussed out. Not that you should wuss out of, but it's like, why start boasting you're going to crucify yourself if you're going to wuss out of it later? But Dustin Diamond? No, that's the guy who played Screech on Saved by the Bell. Dominic Diamond was the host in later years, and this is around the same time that you start getting a lot of zines, you start getting a lot of the internet's just starting to build up. And it's there that you see this culture of toxic masculinity taking over the world of gaming. So there was a point, and I think it's interesting, like, you know, Jem and I grew up more in an era where even, I mean, I know you said, Jem, that you didn't know lots of girls who gamed, but it was more acceptable as small children for us to game than it is later on. And I wonder if we could take that narrative back, if we can change it, because if gaming was once the preserve of everybody, and there was a horrible bunch of people who changed it in the late 90s, how do we fix it?